Yo, what's going on, guys? It's your boy. Welcome back to another video. Today we are going to be giving a halfway through it review it for the Avatar: The Last Airbender show. Personally, I'm not good at binge watching shows, so I am going to be taking my time and slowly digesting the show 4 episodes at a time. So I watched the first half of the show, and I'm really liking it so far. I think that it's very, very interesting, and let's just dive right into this review. Okay, so right off the bat, I want to go ahead and say I think that this show is pretty good. I'm really enjoying a lot of the storytelling with it. I think that the way that they are introducing these characters works relatively well. And for the most part, I'm thinking that the show is pretty solid. But that being said, this show is an adaptation, so we do kind of have to talk about it as an adaptation, where it's falling flat, where it's working well, and I think that one of the big things that I am really liking about the show so far has got to be the choreography for the fight sequences. I think that the fight sequences look incredible. It started off with a really interesting fight sequence between an earthbender and some firebenders, and right off the bat, we are getting to feel the general scope of how this bending actually affects the people who are being attacked by it, and I think it's really, really interesting that they are starting off the show with glimpses of war, because at the end of the day, when you are watching the original animated show, it's really hard to remember while they are doing all their silly little goofy shenanigans that the kids do. There's an actual war going on, and a lot of the times in the original show, wherever they go to different towns or whatever, there's only a bunch of teenagers. There's never really a bunch of adults. And a big part of that is because a lot of the adults have died by going to war. And it's something that's kind of like brushed off relatively quickly in the animated show. And in this movie, they're doing a really, really good job. I called it a movie. It's a show. And this show, they're doing a really good job of kind of diving into some of those more mature tones. And something that I'm really liking about it is they really did a good job of modernizing these characters and kind of making them more realistic in a sense, because something that a lot of people are complaining about online that I think works relatively well is Aang doesn't seem to be as playful as he is in the original show. In the original show, he comes out of the iceberg and he is immediately like, oh my god, yeah, let's go penguin sliding. Oh my god, I'm gonna go play a bunch of like airball, and he's gonna do a bunch of really fun stuff, and he ends up losing that childlike sense of wonder relatively later on in the show because he realizes just how bad war is. Whereas in this series, they decided to kind of start off with that, and I do think that that's kind of a misturn for people who are trying to get into this show, but at the same time, it's more realistic. If we're going to make a live action adaptation of a TV show, we want it to be less cartoony, and I think that that's a big thing that a lot of people are complaining about, is it doesn't live up to the cartoon, it doesn't live up to this, it doesn't live up to that. And another thing that people aren't seeming to realize is that they only have 8 episodes to showcase these characters and what these characters can be and kind of drive the story along forward. So a lot of these episodes are kind of like zooming by, and the first episode is kind of a combination of the first episode of the original show and then something that happens a little bit later on in the first season of the show. And a lot of people aren't liking that, and I will admit there are some things here and there that kind of feel similarly rushed, and I'm kind of like, well, that's upsetting. And I do think that overall this story probably would have worked a little bit better if they had given this season at least 4 or 5 more episodes, because as of right now, part of the reason I'm doing a halfway through it review it is because usually halfway through a show, you should have a general idea of where the show is heading, where this season is going to end, and just overall have a good vibe of what's going on in the show. And we're about 4 episodes in, and so far, a lot of the stuff feels very, very rushed, and we're still not fully understanding, like, why does Aang need to get to the North Pole immediately? He had a flashback where he had like a vision where he sees a bunch of the people in the North Pole kind of dying and not being okay. But on top of that, we've yet to have a conversation where somebody like tells him, hey, in order to master your 4 elements, you need to do it in this particular order, because that's a big part of the show, is that he needs to learn waterbending first, then he needs to learn earthbending, then he needs to learn firebending. And as of right now, almost every single time we have a conversation with Aang and he's talking about, oh, I have this responsibility, I need to be the Avatar, I need to master all 4 elements, he's had multiple opportunities now to potentially, get trained by an earthbender on how to do earthbending and stuff like that. But they are trying to make just a beeline for the North Pole, and it kind of feels very rushed in this. I feel like something that the writers didn't work incredibly well on with this show is having new people who've never seen the original show understand the importance of why the Avatar needs to get to the North Pole. They're just kind of like shoehorning it in there that that's where he needs to go. And they're doing that with a couple of different things. One of the big ones that very disappointed me, and I am still a little upset about, the episode where we meet King Boomy and we find out that Aang and King Boomy used to be friends when they were younger. In the original show, there is like a whole-on episode where Katara and Sokka get kind of like kidnapped or whatever, and they're imprisoned by the Rock King person or whatever, and he makes Aang do a bunch of random different tasks and stuff like that, play a bunch of different games to eventually have the chance to get his friends out of this little prison. And the final question for Aang in that episode, the final challenge he needs to accomplish, is just telling Boomy what his name is, and that's such a big moment. It's such a big surprise because this is the first time in the entire show where Aang realizes, oh my god, somebody I knew and loved is still alive. But in this show, I feel like they completely butchered the character of Boomy. He's still a little crazy old man, but he's not doing anything that really shows that he is friends with the Avatar. He's not really doing anything to help Aang grow as a character, and he's not the friend that he really was to Aang. And it just feels so out of place. And when we first meet King Boomy, he almost immediately introduces himself to Aang, and Aang is like, oh my god, it's Boomy. And there's no suspense to that. They're taking away a lot of the suspense. They're taking away a lot of big reveals. And overall, they're just giving us the straightforward, very flat storyline, which I'm okay with in most cases. But in this show, it's a lot of very deep characters. It's a lot of very interesting storylines. Zuko versus Aang is like a very complex kind of dichotomy because Aang is somebody who hasn't really done anything wrong. He's just a kid who's burdened with a lot of responsibilities. And Zuko is having the same problem on the other side of this battle. And Zuko's an outcast. Zuko's been through a lot. Zuko's has a lot of emotional trauma that he needs to work out. But he really, really thinks that all he needs is to catch the Avatar and that'll fix all of his problems. And he doesn't understand that that won't actually fix all of his problems. And something that bothers me about it is so far in this show, they've only interacted once in the first 4 episodes, which is fine. Like, obviously, they're going to interact a little bit more later on in the show. But they haven't done a good job of showcasing why we should really care too much about either of them. And granted, I have heard some spoilers already because the show's been out for almost a week now. I've heard some spoilers about some stuff that happens with Zuko later in the season. So, like, I know that they're going to fix that. But as of right now, it's, like, weird because they're doing a very straightforward line. And the, like, connection between Zuko and Aang right now is fully just, like, Uncle Iroh having to be like, oh, Zuko isn't that bad. Oh, you don't know Zuko like I know Zuko. Zuko's just doing this because he thinks he has to and stuff like that. And it's like, why aren't they actually interacting with each other? Why is Uncle Iroh just happen to continuously getting into a position where him and Aang are having these conversations? Because I love Uncle Iroh and I like the actor who's playing him. I think that they're doing a good job with him and making him a very likable character who's similar to how he is in the original show. But it's like, it kind of feels like they're just using him as exposition dumps. Every time Aang needs to know something about the Fire Nation, they're having the one friendly firebender who they have, which is Uncle Iroh, and they're just having him basically explain it straight to him. And it's really annoying because the majority of the show has kind of felt like exposition dump after exposition dump after exposition dump. But yeah, so those are a lot of my main issues right off the bat. A couple of other problems that I'm having. I think that all of the acting in this show has been incredibly, incredibly good. And it makes it where the couple of actors who aren't at the same level don't look as good. And now some of you guys are probably going to think, like, what do you mean by that? In my opinion, Katara, that actress, is absolutely killing it. Sokka, that actress, absolutely killing it. Zuko, that actor, absolutely killing it. Even a lot of the side characters, like the actor who played Jet is doing a pretty good job. The actress who played Suki is doing a pretty good job. Like I said, Uncle Iroh is killing it. The engineer and his son all are doing a really good job. And then there's occasionally performances by, like, Azula has only been in the show like one time, so I'm gonna give her the benefit of the doubt for the time being. But her acting performance, it's good, but because all the other ones around them are really, really impressive, it kind of sticks out like a sore thumb a little bit here. And then Aang is also having a similar problem. And I haven't looked up the ages or anything like that. They're probably the 2 youngest actors and actresses on set, but Aang has had a lot of sequences where he is just talking to Appa about how he's just a kid and he just wants to enjoy his childhood and he has all this responsibility and how he doesn't think he's ready for it. And it's happened like 3 times where he just basically stops the show to give you this exposition dump of, oh my god, here's this thing that's happening. And it's like the kid is trying his best. And you can see that there's like tears like starting to swell up in his eyes or whatever. And he's trying his best to kind of have those emotions, but like the dialogue is just not doing him any favors whatsoever, because like I said, he basically just stops the show to tell us stuff that we as the audience already know and already understand. And there's a couple of moments like that though which like really have taken me out of this show. For the most part though, I've liked it. The visuals so far have looked incredible. All the action sequences have looked incredible. The comedy, in my opinion, it's obviously not going to be as funny because, like I mentioned, this is a more mature version of the story. There's a war going on, and they're not going to be sensitive about the war. But, like, so far, Sokka has had a lot of really good comedic moments that I've liked. There's some moments where, like, Zuko is kind of, like, sassy a little bit, and it's pretty entertaining. And overall, I'm just thinking that, like, the show has a lot of good moments, but it's just they took a complex story and they shoved it into an 8-episode format, which in my opinion is not doing it any favors whatsoever. I'm probably going to make a video about that tomorrow, about how filler episodes are very important, because something that really bothers me about this is they're trying to tell like these big grand stories in every single episode. And it's okay, it's interesting, it works, there's a lot of great action sequences, and I'm really liking how much they're like keeping things going and keeping things going. But at the same time, in episode 4, Aang and Katara and Sokka are not together on screen for like maybe even like 3 minutes the entire episode. And it's really, really disappointing because like they're supposed to be best of friends. By the end of the original show, they're basically like a family because of how much time they've spent together, how much trauma they've gone through together, and just like all the small moments where they're like traveling from one city to another city and they're just like stopped by a lake or whatever, and they're just like eating whatever like little scraps of food they can find and just having conversations about, you know, their childhood and like the things that they can remember about their parents and stuff like that. And there's a lot of really good relationship building there that is very, very crucial to that family dynamic, that friendship dynamic. And something that I think is off about the acting is like those 3 actors, like the big 3, don't have as well of chemistry together. Like I think that Sokka and Katara are pretty solid, but like Aang doesn't seem to have great chemistry with either of the other 2, and I kind of feel like it's partially because of the like age differences, because Aang is like 3 or 4 years younger than pretty much the entire rest of the cast, and he kind of does feel like an outcast when he's with the other characters. And it's very, very disappointing to me, because if you had taken the time to do a like regular proper series and you add in 4 or 5 episodes that are kind of more like filler episodes, like in the original animated show, whenever they go to like just like a marketplace together and they go to this like raided pirate ship or whatever, and they try to like buy stuff, and Katara steals the water scroll so that she can learn water bending and stuff like that. That's a pretty interesting episode. It's something that would be relatively low budget because you just need to worry about the setting. There doesn't have to be any action sequences or bending sequences in that entire episode. And like it would do a good job of just introducing the characters to each other. They could spend more time together. And something that works really well with TV shows is throughout the course of the season, the actors get better chemistry because they spend more time together. Whereas in this, it's like, I don't even think they are going to get better chemistry, because so far I've seen no signs that Aang is getting closer to the other 2. And it's really throwing me off a little bit because, like I said, they kind of feel like a family in the original show. And here we don't get any of the sequences of them hanging out together and sitting together. And I think that part of the problem is the CGI budget. They don't have enough CGI budget to constantly have them on Appa. And in the TV show, that's where they have some of their deepest and most personal conversations, is when they're flying on Appa. And because they can't do that all the time, I feel like they're just cutting out of a lot of really important character development moments and a lot of really important character discussions. But that being said, so far I'm liking the show. I think that the action sequences are doing a great job of keeping me interested, because all of the action sequences have been incredible. I like the fact that it's a little bit darker, because honestly, as somebody who is grown up, obviously, I don't want it to just feel like a cartoon. It's not a cartoon. It needs to be better than that. It needs to be different. And at the end of the day, it's an adaptation, which means it's not the exact same show. And I like some of the changes that they're making. I think that it's a very interesting show. And a lot of people online are going to be hating it because it's not the exact same thing as the cartoon. And that's a cartoon. This isn't a cartoon. But that being said, that was it for this video, guys. Thank you guys so much for coming by and checking it out. I love and appreciate you guys so much for watching. If you liked it, feel free to like and subscribe. And I will hopefully see you guys in the next one. Peace out. Bow. 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 Back at it again, but that's a relevant flow. So smooth, they calling me Mr. Elegant. Like an elephant, I got a long nose. Like a president, I've got a few hoes. Swift with a stutter, I'm smooth like butter. Don't see it coming when I slip undercover. Like a big dog, but I don't bite. I'm still a big broad, I'd win that fight. Come match you and I knock out your lights.